So, building JavaScript object. You may have heard the term object before. Objects are similar to the arrays, except that instead of using indexes to access and modify their data, you access the data in objects through what are called properties. So, these are similar to the arrays, except that these uses indexes to access and modify their data. You access the data in objects through what are called properties. So objects are useful for storing data in structured way like this. So cat the name of the cat is Whiskers. There are four legs for the this cat object, one tail. The enemies are, so this is objects are useful for storing data in a structured way and can represent a real life world object. Okay, like a cat. Here is the example of the cat. So this is the variable cat is a object, and these are the properties. So you can access data in the objects through these properties. So name, legs, tails, and the enemy. In this example, all of the properties are stored as a string. So all of the properties are strings such as name, legs, tails. However, you can also use numbers as properties. Okay, you can also use numbers as properties also, but in this case all the properties are string inside of the double quotation. You can even omit the quotes for a single word string properties as follows, like so another object. So make, so you can omit the quotes for a single word string property. So make Ford. So the 5 is 5, like this is the example. So how you can make the properties you can. So however, if your object has any non-string property, JavaScript will automatically typecast them as a string. Make an object that represent a dog called my dog. So there is already initialized the my dog object, which contains the properties name or string. So name should be a string, legs, tails, and the friends. You can set these objects property to whatever value you want, as long as name is a string, legs and tails are the number, and friends is the array. So this is similar to this. So what we can do is, so name is a string, so you should pass like this, and the name is husky, like this. So separate the properties with a comma. So another one is the legs. So legs are the four legs, and now the tail is one. Now the friends. So friends we can do like this also. Friends, this should be the array. So friends are the humans, and the humans and what humans and wild animals, like this. So wilds. So which is good. My dog should contain the property name, and it should be string. Legs it should be number, tails it should be number, friend it should be array, contain all of the given property. If you run the test, now accessing object properties with dot notation. Okay, there are two ways to access the properties of an object. One is the dot notation using this dot, and another one is the bracket notation, which is using the square bracket, similar to an array, similar to how we access the elements of the array using these square brackets and the indexes. So dot notation is what you see when you know the name of the property you are trying to access ahead of time. So it is this. So dot notation is what you see when you know the name of the property you are trying to access ahead of time. Here is a sample of using dot notation to read the object's property. So this is the my object, one object with the property 1 and property 2 with the value 1 and value 2 and value 1. So property 1 value I can access, that is my object dot property 1. So it will access the value of the property 1. Similarly for the property 2, so property 1 value would have the value of the string val1, and property 2 value would have the value of the string value 2. Read in the property value of the test object using the dot notation. Set the variable head value equal to the object's property head, and set the variable sort value to the equal to the object property sort. So add value should be string. So this add value variable should be string. So how we can do that is, so uh, accessing the object property head. Okay, the object property of head, which is the ball cap, and assigning it to this, how we can do that is test object dot head. So now it will have assigned the value of head value, and similarly the value of head value should be now ball cap, and the sort value should be string, which is string. So we can make that string is by giving the sort. The value of sort should be the jersey. We should use the dot notation, so we are using the dot notation. If you run the test, now we are good. Accessing object property with the bracket notation, similar to accessing the element in the arrays. The second way to access the property of the object is the bracket notation, the square bracket notation. If the property of the object you are trying to access has the space in its name, you will need to use the bracket notation. So however, you can still use bracket notation on object property without the spaces also, but in the very similar case of, if you have the space in its name, so if you want to access this and it has the space, so we can do the bracket notation, so like this. Other than that, if you only have the no space also, we can access, you can still use the bracket notation on object property without the no space also. Here is a sample of the using bracket notation to read the object's property. So reading this object kirk the object property, so we are giving like this. So whatever in there we are passing into this object. So similarly to the more space, and this is for the new no space. So my object my space would have the string kit, my object more space would have the string is spoke, and my object no space would have the string uss enterprise. Know that property name with space is in them must be in quotes, single or the double quotes. Use the value of the property and entry the doc of the test object using bracket notation and assign them to the entry value. So we are giving that to this, so read the value of the entry. So copy this whole, so the property name with the space, so it has the space in that, should be must be in the code, so we are copying the whole of that. So test object, and inside of this bracket notation we are pasting in that. So now it is this entry value has now a string hamburger. Similarly we are copying this, or the drink, so copying this similar to the above one, pasting in here. So now entry value should be a string, which is Value event should be hamburger, drink value should be string. You should use the bracket notation twice. So if you run the test, now accessing object properties with variables. So another use of bracket notation on object is to access the property which is stored as the value of the variable. This can be very useful for iterating through an object properties or when accessing a lookup table. Here is an example of using a variable to access the property. So this is the dog, and this is the dog object. So these are the properties separated with the comma. So where my dog is a hunter. Now my breed. So what is the breed? So dogs and my dog. So dogs, my dog is the hunter. If you console log my breed, the string document would be displayed in the console. So how we get that thing? So this is the dog object, this is the my dog another variable, this is the my breed variable. So my breed variable is dogs and my dog. So what is the my dog? My dog is the hunter. So what is the hunter? Hunter is Doberman. So let me, so what is in here is, let me show you using my pen. So so this, so the now my dog, okay. So my breed, so dog, my dog. So what is the my dog? My dog is this, and this is going to be hunter. Now this hunter, now from the dogs it is searching, now this dogs in here and this dog is searching in the hunter, and this is in the, now this full becomes the Doberman. Now similarly the breed is Doberman. So you know what this is. So another way you can use this concept is when the property name is collected dynamically during the program execution as always. So some object prop name is a John. So function, this is the, so this function, so this is the function which is taking which is the function name is prop prefix. So it is taking any string, and so taking any string and adding prop and that string, returning that prop and string. Function is anything that takes properties and returns something. Okay, these are the functions. Functional components or the functions are the similar thing. So now in the, so this is the function. So if you pass in the prefix name, now prop name would be there, okay, without any space in there. So it will return that to that this function, and this variable now will have the prop name. And if you console log the sum object and the sum prop, so some prop would have the value, so some prop will have the value of the string prop name, okay, and the string require, and the string John would be displayed in the console. Why? Because so dynamically during the, because this some, now this prop name is again the John, okay. So accessing object properties, another is a bracket bracket notation on object is to access a property which is stored as a value of a variable. This can be, so this property which we accessed using our bracket notation is stored as a variable, value of the variable, and it can be used uh, in any sort of anywhere in the program. Note that we do not use quotes around the variable name when using it to access the property, because we are using the value of the variable, not the name. So we do not use quotes around the variable name. So we are not using the quotes using around the variable name when using it to access the property. So we are accessing this property in here because we are using the value. So we are using the value of the variable, not the name. So set the player name variable to 16, then use this variable to look up the player's name and assign it to a player. So player name should be a number. So set a player number variable 16. So if I set this to 16, now the player number is 16. Okay, so 16, so 16, and in the test object if you pass like this and pass this variable in here, the player is extracted from the test object, and the 16 is the Montana, so the player variable now becomes the Montana. The variable player should be string, so player is now the string because it has the Montana. The value of the player should be Montana. You should use the bracket notation to access this object. So we are accessing that object, test object. You should not assign the value Montana to the, so we should not assign by deleting this. So you can see this test object as the string properties with these things. So you should be using a variable player number in a bracket notation. So if you run the test, now updating object properties. So after you have created the JavaScript object, you can update its property at any time, just like you would update any other variable. You can either use the dot or the bracket notation to update. For example, let's look our dog. So our dog, these are the name, leg, tail, and the friends are the everything. Since he is particularly a happy dog, let's change his name to a string happy camper here. Camper here. How update his object name property? So how we can update? So first we have to access that property, so our dog dot name, and assign it to the new string, or we can do it by using the object notation, no, not object notation, the bracket notation to update, like our dog, and inside of this the property name inside of the square brackets, and assign it a new string. Now when we evaluate our dog dot name, so if you console log this our dog dot name, instead of getting camper we will get his new name, camper, happy camper. So update the my dog object's name property. Let's change our name from coder to happy coder. You can either use the dot or the bracket notation. So I will show you from the both how we can change that. So what we can do is, first of all we have to access that property. So from the my dog object, accessing the name. Okay, so name is equals to now happy coder, like that. Also we can do my dog so So this is using dot notation. Okay, so this is using dot notation, this is using bracket notation. So what we are doing is, so we are updating object properties. Okay, so using bracket notation, so my dog, then inside of the square bracket we should pass the full name of the string inside the double quotation. So name is equals to, now assign it a string happy coder, like that. So these both things will be right. So if you run the test, now add new properties to the JavaScript object. So you can add new property to the existing JavaScript object the same way you would modify them. So here is how we would add a bark property to our dog object. So our dog dot bark bow wow, or using the bracket notation also. Now we can evaluate our dog dot bark. We will get this bark bow wow. So for example, this is our dog, this is the name, these are the already defined objects. So we are pushing on new property. These are the properties of the object which are predefined. Now we are pushing on new property which is the bark in our dog object with the value of bow wow. So similarly in here also, this is the my dog, these are the friends. Add a bark property to my dog and set it to a dog sound such as woof. You may use either a dot or the bracket notation. So let's copy this. So we are adding new properties. So using the dot notation, my dog dot bark and equals to, so we have the woof. So similarly using the bracket notation, so my dog dot, no dot, using the bracket notation, so inside of this, so bark, and inside, so sorry, inside of signing woof. So these are the things you should take care. So while doing in the bracket notation, you should pass similar to these. So if you run the test, now deleting properties from the JavaScript object. So we can also delete properties from the JavaScript object like this. So delete our dog.bark, so it will delete the bark. So for example, if we had these properties, so if you want to delete this whole property and the value, so delete our dog.bark after the last line, so above our dog. So now it will look like this. So delete the tail property from the dog, because tail in the dog are just only one. So we are doing now deleting. Now we are deleting using, so let me show you, I am giving you in the both ways dot, so dot notation. Okay, dot notation, so give the delete keyword and what you want to delete from which object. So I want to delete my dog dot tails object. So this will also do the same job. Similarly using the bracket notation, delete my dog, and inside of this tails. So these both will give the same job. So you should delete the property tails. You should not modify the my dog setup, so you cannot delete this in here. Now using objects for lookups. So object can be thought of as a key value storage, like a dictionary. So if you have tabular data, you can use an object to look up value rather than a switch statement or an if-else chain. This is the most useful when you know that your input data is limited to a certain range. Here is an example of the simple reverse alphabet lookup. So one like this 26a, so alpha 2, then it will give this alpha 24, give the capital C. So if you have the value 2, 2 also y, so alpha value 2, so alpha 2 is a string y, alpha 24 is a string C, alpha value, so alpha value is again string y. Convert the switch statement into an object called lookup. Use it to look up a value, assign the associated string to a result variable. So how we can do that is, so we can do is, so we have to convert the switch statement or the if else statement, chain statement, into the lookup for the lookups. Like, so what we can do is, delete first, delete this break statement. So how you can do that is, so case control D, control D, control D in here, so it will delete this whole line, and sorry, it will delete the whole line. So in that also delete this, give the backspace in here, delete that. Now highlight the break, control D, control D, control D, delete that all. Now, so this is the function lookup. So the phonetic lookup, the Charlie phonetic lookup. So what you can do is, only the code, change the code below. So copy this. So this is the above one. So copy this, copy in here, delete this, and give the keyword bar. So again highlight the equal to's. So instead of equal, what we need is this, and instead of the semicolon which are terminating, okay, control, sorry, but from here, so instead of this, use the comma. So my phonetic lookup equals to this. Now I think it is good. If you phonetic lookup the Charlie, then it is in Chicago. So tab this. So now I think this is good. So we now need the last one. So it will return the result. What it will return? the result, but we do not need the result. So phonetic lookup. So if you run the test, I think should be equals to alpha. Charlie is the Chicago. So I think phonetic lookup, so this value goes in here. I think now this is the value, this is the phonetic lookup. Now phonetic lookup, you should not modify the return statement, you should not use the case switch statement, should be equal to undefined. So get the hint. So it's lacking us one statement or something like that. So we need, so we are providing value where so this is the value, I think. So var lookup, so this is the lookup, and lookup to the result. Switch the into the object called lookup. So we want the object called lookup. So lookup, use it to look up for the values. So use it to look up for the values. So lookup. So what we can do is look up, now passing the value. I think now it is. So this should be, so we are returning, so it is not returning again. Okay, it is not returning. So what should we do is, so assign it to the result variable. Now it is returning. So you know now what is going on in here. So let me give you a quick final summary. So we created our lookup object with all these properties and the values. Then what we did is we created that, okay, lookup. And now this is the function call. So it is calling the phonetic lookup function, and we are passing the Charlie value in there. So value is here, so we are only accepting this parameter, uh, 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 we are only having this parameter with the argument of Charlie in here. So we have to use that Charlie using the object note, the bracket notation in the lookup object, and where, so what will be the output is stored in the result, and we are finally returning the result, so it is good. Testing objects for property. Sometimes it is useful to check if the property of the given object exists or not. We can use the has on property in the camel case and the prop name method of the object to determine if the object has the given property name or not. The dot as property returns true or false if the property is found or not. So for example, this is the object This is the top and these are the properties. So my object dot has on property dot top, this returns the true, second one returns the false. So this is the function. So you can pass the prop name also. So let's copy this. So modify the function check object, only change code above this return. So what it would return. So modify the to test if the object passed to the function object contains a specific property, check prop. If the property is found, if not found. So check property. So this is the function. So you have to change only this. Not found. Check object check. So modify the function to test if the object in the function contains the specific property, check prop. So instead of this, you should use return my. So check object dot has on property, and in the prop name, which is the prop, check prop. I think this will not work because this should return check object. So check object. So now object or object dot as prop name if the as the if an object passed to the function object contains the specific property, which is the check prop, and then it will return. So otherwise not found. Okay, so returns true, returns false. So modify the function. So I think what you can do is if and check prop return if the object has on property, check prop. Otherwise not found, return found. So if you run the test, so if so why it is not working, I think if is inside of this. This is the if statement, check prop. So get the help. I think similar to this object. So this object has on if object. Okay, return object check prop. So we have to give the conditions. So this is good, but we have to give the condition. So this condition is in here. So if the object has the property checkprop, then return found, or return object checkprop. That property will be returned. Otherwise it will return none. So if you run the test now, it is good. So we should declare, it was a silly mistake, we should declare it inside this. So what is the boilerplate of the if else statement? If the condition, then the statement. So pseudocode is if the condition 1, then the statement 1, else if again the condition 2, statement 2. So similarly, finally the else will work without a condition, but else return 0. So like this. So run the test. Now manipulating complex objects. Sometimes you may want to store data in a flexible data structure. A JavaScript object is one of the way to handle the flexible data. They allow for the arbitrary combinations of the string number, booleans, arrays, function, and the object. Here is an example of the complex data structure. So this is our music. So the artist is the Daft Punk, title is the Homework, release year 1997, format is this. So formats. So this is the array, in here array of the object format array. Okay, so this is the array which contains one object also inside of this. So the object has various pieces of metadata about the album. So it has also nested format array. If you want to add more album record, you can do this by adding records to the top level array. Object all data in a property which has a key value format. In the example album artist, Daft Punk is the property that has the key of the artist and value of the Daft Punk. JavaScript object notation or the JSON is a release data interchange format used to store data. So JSON object. So this is the JSON object. Note you need to place the comma after each object in the array unless it is the last object in the array. So we do not need the comma separation in the last object in the array. So add a new album to the JSON. So what is JSON? So JSON is a JavaScript object notation for the data interchanging format. It is easy for humans to write. It is easy to for the machines to parse and generate. Okay, so this is based on the subset of the JavaScript programming standard ECMA 262 third edition, December 1999. JSON is a text format that is completely language independent but uses the convenient data similar to the programmers to the C family of the language, including C, C++, C Sharp, Java, JavaScript, Perl, Python, and many others. These properties make JSON an ideal data interchanging language. So JSON is built on two data structures: the collection of name value pairs in various languages that is realized as an object record structures in C, dictionary, hash table, keyed list, or associated arrays. An ordered list of objects in most languages is realized as an array, vector list, or the sequence. So object inside of this, so white space string comma the value, so we can this. So that we have now the example, like so for the JavaScript JSON. So you can read these things. But now what we have here, add a new album to the my music array. Add a new album to the my music array. Add artist and title strings. Release your number and the format array of a string. My music should be, or array my music should have at least two elements. My music should have at least two elements. The elements in the my music array should be object. Your object in my music should have at least four properties. Contain the artist, which is a string. My music should contain the title, which is the string. Contains which is a number. Music there comes the format, which is an array. So this is good. So if you run this test, my music should have at least two elements. At least two elements. So what is lacking in there? So should have at least two elements. Okay, so this is only one lacking. At my music should have at least two elements. Add a new album to the my music. Add artist and title string. New album. So get the help. I didn't get the question. I think so. Let's see that. And paste after. So after this comma, add a record here. So I have to add a new album to the my music array, comma, and in this, so give the artist. So I have a new music listening, which is Punk by Young Thug. So let's do this. So this is the album. Adding this album in, so artist. So artist is Young Thug. Then artist and the title. Title is the Punk and release. So the release year is the 2021 and release year number and formats. So formats is the array of string. So we can define this array using like this. Okay, this is the format. So after that we have used a comma and added a similar to that format, and we can use the gold or not. So what we can do is other songs. So format release format. So what is the formats? So this album is the guest available in this. The format is we perform the song, everything in here. Credit, professional ratings, chronology, label. So let's give this format YSL 300 and so these are the record companies. Okay, so formats or the labels. Okay, so here is given the formats, so we are giving that in YSL 300 and at Z, and like this is the format. And also we can add our genre, but we can give that also genre hip hop trap. Now accessing the nested objects. The sub properties of the object that can be accessed by chaining together the dot or the bracket notation. Here is the nested object variable our storage. So this is the disk, this is the object of the this is the object, and inside of this is the another object our storage. So our storage cabinet top drawer dot folder 2 our storage, then the cabinet and the top drawer the folder 2 would be, so if you print this would be the secrets, and our storage disk and drawer is the stapler, would be the stapler. Accessing the my storage object and assign the contents of the glove box property to the glove box contents. Use the dot notation for all the properties where possible, otherwise use the bracket notation. So my storage dot dot, I think it is the car, then dot inside and the globe and the globe box. I think this is good. Now this the maps. Your code should use the dot and bracket notation. So my storage then the dot, I think dot car dot inside glove box. Accessing nested arrays. As we have seen in earlier examples, object can contain both nested objects and nested array. Similar to accessing nested objects, array bracket notation can be changed to access nested arrays. Here is an example of how to access our nested arrays. Our pets, the array animal type, names, animal type and the names. So our pets now with 0 is this one and the names is this one and the one is the music. Okay, yeah, this one would be the floppy and our pets 1 is this one and the names and the 0 is would be the spot. Using the dot or the bracket notation, set the variable secondary to the second item in the tree. So this is so secondary, so this is set to the second item in the tree list from the my plants. So my plants, this is the my plants object. So we are setting the variable secondary to the second item. Second item is the pine in the trees list from the my plant of my object. So secondary should equal the string pine. Your code should use dot and bracket notation to access my plant. So how we can do that is, now first of all from the my plants object in the second element, okay, so 0 and 1, then dot should list and inside of which also the 1. So my plants 1 list 1. So my plants 1 it would go on to this and now it will go on to the list and the 1 in here. If you run the test, a record collection, you are given an object literal representing a part of your music album collection. Each album has a unique ID number as its key and several other properties. Not all albums have complete information. You start with an update record functions that takes in the object literals records containing the musical album collection and an ID of prop like the artist or the tracks and a value. Complete the function using the rules below to modify the object passed to the function. Your function must always return the entire record collection object. So uh, if the prop isn't a track and value isn't an empty string, update or set that album's prop to value. If prop is track but the album doesn't have the tracks property, create an empty array and add value to it. If prop is track and value isn't an empty string, and value to the end, add the value to the end of the album's existing tracks array. If value is an empty string, delete the given prop property from the album node. A copy of the record collection object is used for the test. So this is the record collection. only change code below this line. So this is the record collection with the name. So this is the id, this is the album title, this is the artist, these are the tracks, two tracks in here, no tracks, and the artist. So what is the update record? So we are passing these things to these. So return the records. So record collection. So let's get the hint or the help. So for the given id parameter should be associated with the record object if the value parameter isn't an empty string. Finally return record. Into one, use an if else statement to check the needed step to access the value of the key user record id and the properties. You can push to an array that doesn't exist. Use as on property to check first. So function of the record is the records id if the property is not equal to tracks and the value is not equals to empty. Records id property has on property. 2 is the so this is the first one. If you copy this if statement in here, so function object records, okay, copy this and copy this. So what is in here? Function of the require the property not equal to tracks, value not equal to empty would be the value, else if so if you run the test, so this is the solution code. First checks if the value is the blank or not. So if so, then the key is removed from the object. If the first check doesn't pass, the next check in the props. So if prop probably the artist is not the tracks or the something else. This is like this. So if you pass in the record collection in here and all the things, so if you pass the artist should be the string abd, okay. take a chance. So if you pass the record collection 5439 track take a chance on name artist should not be set. So this is the record collection, so you know how this all things work. So if you run the test,